The federal government is barreling towards a painful and unnecessary government shutdown thanks to the chaos in the House Republican Conference, as Donald Trump orders his MAGA cultists to thwart the efforts of weak and ineffective Speaker Kevin McCarthy. But before we unpack all that, if you haven't yet, please hit that like, subscribe, and the alert bell. Maybe check out my Patreon. I'd appreciate the support. All right, folks, so I am catching up on the story. I was out of commission yesterday because I tested positive for COVID. Feeling a bit better now, but there's a lot packed into the story over the span of 24 hours. The situation is this. We are heading towards, in about 10 days, a government shutdown. Nowhere near as cataclysmic as what a debt ceiling default would have been as from a couple of months ago, but still pretty bad. This will have sweeping impact on millions of Americans, inconvenience them in enormous ways, will cause issues with the millions of federal workers in this country, and is also completely unnecessary. But this is what we have because of the House Republican Conference and the chaos within their ranks, not just between moderate Republicans and far-right Republicans, but even among far-right Republicans. And then you throw Donald Trump into the mix, and it's just a recipe for disaster. We do have a couple of clips to play on that front, but again, just to set the stage, this is reported recently. So the House Republicans have failed to advance a defense spending bill, which is usually one of the easiest things to pass. Speaker Kevin McCarthy failed for a second time on Thursday to advance a bill funding, not defunding, the DOD, dealing another blow to his efforts to avert a government shutdown. The GOP is in a state of crisis, unable to even begin a debate on appropriations bill that typically garners broad support. Okay, the House voted 212 to 216 against moving the funding bill to a final vote. 5 of the Freedom Caucus, the far-right MAGA Freedom Caucus, including Dan Bishop, Andy Biggs, Eli Crane, Marjorie Taylor Greene, and Matt Rosendale, voted with Democrats against the measure, okay? And now, again, this is just indicative of the broad issues suffering within the Republican Party. Now, in response to this is what Kevin McCarthy had to say.
Frustrating in the sense that I don't understand why anybody votes against bringing the idea and having the debate. And then you got all the amendments if you don't like the bill. This is a whole new concept of individuals that just want to burn the whole place down.
So he's frustrated because of the chaos in the Republican Party. Seems like people want to burn stuff down. They're not interested in responsibly governing. Well, Kevin, duh. Of course, that's your party. That is what you have allowed your party to become. You have aided and abetted it, think you could weaponize it and its energy to your own advantage, and now you're suffering the consequences of that double-edged sword. I have no sympathy for this man and other semi-loyal, small d Democrats, people who profess to be loyal to democracy but are aiding and abetting this extreme, authoritarian, anti-democratic cult of personality. Kevin McCarthy helped create this situation. He helped empower people like Marjorie Taylor Greene and Matt Gaetz and Andy Biggs and so on and so forth. He helped elevate this level of crazy. And he gave away the farm with respect to any leverage he had as Speaker of the House just to get the gavel. No sympathy for this man. And because of his incompetence and his weakness, the American people are going to suffer as a consequence. Now, you might be thinking, okay, well, historically speaking, government shutdowns blow back against those who trigger it, which is almost always Republicans. It's probably going to be the case here. Why are they doing this? This is not in their electoral self-interest, especially when you have 18 Republican congresspeople in Biden districts, right, who are, the odds of Republicans keeping the House in the next election cycle are extremely slim, period. Why would you make it that much worse? And this tweet from Matt Gaetz, and we're going to play a clip from Matt Gaetz as well, kind of gives it away. Trump opposes the continuing resolution, and the continuing resolution is another piece of legislation in parallel to this. Basically, Kevin McCarthy is basically trying to buy himself some time. Let's fund the government for 30 days as we continue to debate this. Well, Donald Trump is saying, no, don't do that. And that's where this is coming from. A very important deadline is approaching at the end of the month. Republicans in Congress can and must defund all aspects of crooked Joe Biden's weaponized government that refuses to close the border and treats half the country as enemies of state. This is also the last chance to defund these political prosecutions against me and other patriots. They failed on the debt limit now, but they must not fail now. Use the power of the purse and defend the country. That's what Matt Gaetz is getting at, right? He's taking his orders from his cult leader, Donald Trump. Donald Trump is willing to burn the country down, and so are his cultists, Matt Gaetz and Marjorie Taylor Greene, et cetera, and so forth, in order to secure what they think is a short-term political win. But Donald Trump is a malignant narcissist. He only cares about himself. He doesn't care about the Republican Party. So if he thinks a government shutdown would be good for him, the idea of not being able to fund the Department of Justice and Special Counsel Jack Smith, he'll gladly roast the GOP alive, even if it costs the GOP the election or the House in 2024. He doesn't care. He's already demonstrated that with previous elections. This is what Matt Gaetz has to say on the matter. And note what Gaetz says at the very, very end.
So can you give us your latest thoughts on the CR and what your plan is?
I'm doing everything I can to assemble a coalition to defeat the Donald CR. I believe that it is really kind of frivolous in the cuts because they only occur for 30 days. I don't think we lead to any programmatic reform. And I'm over the CR era of the House of Representatives. The deal we made in January compels single subject spending bills where each agency comes forward and defends their budget.
When he's saying the deal in January, he's referring to the deal he made with Kevin McCarthy and others that was part of the farm that Kevin McCarthy had to give away. He's talking about Republicans' deal with one another.
And those would be bills that would be open to amendment. That's what the American people want to see. And that's the only way we're actually going to get to the type of substantive review that yields actual results. 8% cut, 1% cut, 2% cut. This is not the work of a serious legislative body.
And so you're comfortable with a government shutdown at the end of that?
Well, I'm not comfortable with it, frankly. We should have had our spending bills moving. You know, when we passed H.R. 2, we should have passed our Department of Homeland Security appropriations bill. When we moved the NDAA, we should have moved the defense appropriations bill. But we're behind, and someone has to be held accountable for the fact that we've been off schedule. We can't blame Joe Biden and the Democrats for why the Republican-controlled House of Representatives hasn't passed single-subject spending bills. That's our fault. So we have to deal with that. We will likely have to endure some degree of a shutdown, but that's why right now, rather than dithering around with the Donald CR that doesn't have the votes, we should be moving single-subject spending bills.
So even Matt Gaetz says, you can't blame Joe Biden for this. You can't blame the Democrats for this. You have to blame Kevin McCarthy. Now, of course, he and Donald Trump also deserve quite a bit of the blame as well. Again, this is an unnecessary situation of the Republican Party's own making. It's Donald Trump's fault. It's Kevin McCarthy's fault. It's Matt Gaetz' fault. It's Marjorie Taylor Greene's fault. It's also the fault of moderate Republicans who, again, have aided and abetted this wing of the Republican Party. But he's right in the sense that Joe Biden has zero responsibility in this, and the Democrats have zero responsibility in this. And what's hilarious is, in response to what Matt Gaetz said about blaming Kevin McCarthy and saying that Joe Biden, President Biden, and the Democrats can't be blamed, the official White House Twitter page says this. They use this onion meme, heartbreaking, the worst person you know just made a great point. This is the official White House Twitter page dunking on Matt Gaetz using an onion meme, calling him the worst person they know. That's a competitive title. I don't know if I would give it to Gaetz. He's certainly up there, but that's hilarious. And it's also true. He's right for all the wrong reasons, and he's right only about that specific point. Again, this is a problem of the GOP's own making. Now, what's important is for Democrats to stay on the ball with respect to this, with respect to the messaging in particular. They have to make the American people aware. They can't just, facts don't speak for themselves. So even though Matt Gaetz is correctly saying, yeah, this isn't President Biden's fault, this isn't Democrats' fault, this is our fault, this is the Republican Party's fault, Democrats have to ruthlessly push forward that message. Hey, if there's a shutdown, even hear it from Matt Gaetz, it's the GOP's fault, it's the GOP's fault, it's the GOP's fault, it's the GOP's fault. They need to be shouting it from the rooftops because based on the current trajectory, we are heading for a government shutdown in 10 days.